Running the floor, Embiid stuffs it. Harden for three.
James Harden with his second triple.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Pick Swap Podcast. It is a nice Monday evening in July. It is me and Sean Barnard as usual. Sean, how you doing, man?
Yeah, what's going on, James? We got no more summer league, no more live basketball for a little while, but we're kind of in the thick of things and kind of just the NBA drama fest of not even free agency anymore, but just the trade market really. And it feels like everything's at kind of a standstill right now. We saw the Deandre Ayton offer sheet and everything. So yeah, that kind of led us to this conversation. So we're doing a little bit different today, and I'm excited to get into some center ranking.
Yeah, so we're gonna go through. We're gonna do our top 8 centers in the league. Sean mentioned to me he might make some people upset with his ranking, so I'm excited to hear what he's got to say. I want to point out really briefly, so some James Harden stuff today, just some like cutesy little James Harden stuff today. The article came out with him, and it got me itching to see the Sixers play basketball again, man. He said, I'm going to be an aggressor. I'm going to be back and different. I'm getting healthy. I know what I got to be, and I'm going to be it. He's all in and winning and all that stuff. So that got me going a little bit. I was all ready this morning. I was like watching highlights and shit. I'm like, he's back. He's back. I'm ready for it. Did you read into that stuff at all? Or are you just kind of, waiting to see?
Yeah, I mean, this is the James Harden victory tour right now. He took the pay cut. He did his thing. Now it's time for him to accept his flowers with it. So cool. He's launching his little wine brand and doing his thing.
I got to get a bottle.
Yeah, we definitely got to try it for sure.
We got to get a bottle.
Yeah, and him and Joel all talking all the time, best of friends. Loving seeing that too. Joel Embiid's rocking out at bar mitzvah. I feel like the vibes are good in the Sixers world right now. Yeah,
absolutely. I think so too. And it only took us 2 months to get here. Yeah. I tell you, every time the turnaround is quick. We went from hating this team and being disgusted with James Harden in the playoffs to loving him and can't wait to see him play again. So, that's the life of a 76ers fan. And here we are. So let's get into this center talk. So the DeAndre Ayton stuff kind of got you going. So we're going to go through our top 8 centers. We're going to go one by one. You go, I go. Do you want me to go first or do you want to go first? Because, the first 2 are pretty obvious.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe there's some bias that'll trickle in here as well, but you can go ahead and start.
Yeah, I'll start and just give my little stipulation for kind of where my mindset was for picking. So first off, what led to this conversation is after the DeAndre Ayton got his signing, I tweeted out that DeAndre Ayton is the top 5 center in the league, which we'll see if I still stand on that. But that's essentially what led me. Got some hate. But what I'm kind of looking for, and I think we kind of talked a little bit beforehand about center is kind of a unique position to rank because it's so kind of scheme oriented and just everything that goes along with it. Center is obviously kind of a dying breed in the NBA, and there's it's just a unique position, I would say, it's in terms of ranking. But I'm looking at this and what I prioritize. To me, I think it's more important defensively as a center than just about any other position. I think that to have a championship caliber team, you have to have a center that's capable of being an anchor of a defense and guard in space. I think there's a lot of centers that get played off the court in the playoffs. And to me, you can't consider yourself one of the best at the position if you're getting played off the court in the playoffs. So that's kind of what I weighed when looking at this. And yeah, you got anything else or you want to dive right in?
Yeah, I agree with you there. You and I mentioned defense to me ends up being more important with these guys. Both of us left Vucevic off of our lists. I know some people might have maybe they think he's in there. Our reasoning behind that is good quality offensive player, below average or well below average defensive player. To me, it's more important for my center to be a strong defensive player and a little bit less skilled on the offensive end, to put it that way. So go ahead and give me your number 1. Or do you want to go from 8?
We'll go 1 to 8. I feel like the top
I think so too.
obvious. There's no intrigue. So My number one, I mean, you can call us biased for it or whatever, but I have Joel Embiid as the best center in the league. And this ties back to what we just talked about defense. I think that matters. I don't think Jokic is as poor of a defender as he gets the rep for, but I do think he's a guy like will take plays off on defense sometimes and isn't just like the anchor that you look for. But there's not too much you can say about Joel Embiid. 28 years old in the prime of his career, averaged 30.6 points, led the league in scoring last year, 11.7 rebounds, 4.2 assists, 1.5 blocks, 1.1 steals, and shot 37.1% from three. So there's not much on a basketball court that this guy can't do. I'm impressed he continues to add layers to his game, and I think he's the best at his position.
I can't wait to see him again. Like we were talking about earlier, I can't wait to see this guy back in action. Not too much to say that we haven't already said many, many times. But yeah, I have him beat here as well. I understand. I like it almost like hurt writing it out. You know what I mean? Because I'm just like, Jokic is a 2-time MVP, so back to back.
Sure.
I'm not going to argue with anybody right now. If somebody wants to tell me that Jokic is the best center in the league, I'll say, okay, that's fine. To me, if I'm picking my number one right now, if I'm starting with, if I'm picking the best player from each position, in my opinion, who I would want in that position, I'm picking Joel Embiid. So yeah. That's my reasoning. So then number two for you is also Jokic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't dislike Jokic. Like, I think I have more dislike for him just because of, like, obviously the Embiid versus Jokic, and I feel like people tear these guys down rather than build like the other one up way too often. But it is a little bit of choose your flavor, which kind of stylistic version you like better. Personally, I just don't value passing in the center the way that like I think is perceived with him, and the way that advanced analytics count for him, which I think is crazy how assists are way heavier because of his position, that kind of thing. But I mean, obviously an incredibly talented basketball player, incredibly high IQ basketball player. 27 years old, averaged 27.1 points, 13.8 rebounds, 7.9 assists, 1.5 steals, 0.9 blocks, shot 33.7% from three. I also think the Nuggets do an incredible job just building a system around him and having him just the way that they move off ball, the way the cuts are. It's just it's a pretty much perfect situation for him, and he obviously delivers. So Nikola Jokic, number two on my list.
Yeah, I agree. I have him there as well. Again, maybe one of the more skilled bigs that's ever played. I think you could say the same about Joel Embiid. But I think Jokic, obviously, passing-wise, is incredible. The way he manipulates the offense, incredible. The way he controls a game is unreal. Two-time MVP, back-to-back. Not too much to say after that statement. So Jokic at number two. And this is where it gets interesting. This is where, I think you can go a lot of different ways. And what we were saying earlier is, here's the break. I think after this, I think there's 5 or 6 guys that can go next. So who do you have here at 3?
Yeah, it's interesting. And my list here definitely differs for like who I personally prefer versus who I think is the best. And who I think is the best, number 3, I have Karl Anthony Towns. And it's weird because of the Gobert and Towns thing. I wasn't really sure how to rank them. I do have both of them on here. I do think they're one of the rare combinations of like twin towers that will work because of what a great shooter Karl Anthony Towns is. Looking at his stats, 26 years old, 24.6 points, 9.8 rebounds, 3.6 assists, 1.1 block, 1.0 steal, and shot 41% from three, which is just crazy from a big man. I think he's going to do a ton of just kind of spot up shooting this year, which is going to be unique. But why I have Towns this high is I think obviously he's a very impressive offensive player. I think he is solid enough defensively to still be a guy that can be like an anchor of a team. He can guard in the perimeter a little bit. I wouldn't say he excels in these areas, but I think given the wiggle room and how much he excels on offense, I still think he's my third best center in the NBA.
Yeah, so this is funny. I excluded Cat entirely.
Wow.
Well, not because I don't think he's top 8 in this category. You can't consider him a center anymore. So that's where I drew the line. If I was including Cat, this is where I would have him. So this is all going to look a little bit odd because I would have Cat here. I was just having a conversation yesterday about him, and one of my friends was like, he's an elite. He's one of the best shooting bigs ever.
Sure.
And I said, yeah, for sure. I said, but he's an elite shooter, period. No need to put the big there. He's a legitimate shooter. He can score from the perimeter and off the bounce, off the catch. He can create his own. He can even create his own shot on the perimeter. It's incredible what he does. So if Cat was, on this list for me, I just for the fact that Gobert, is playing with him, I took him off. So for me, this is funny. So I have DeAndre Ayton here.
Wow.
And again, I've said this. I said this last year. I said this before last season, actually. And I'm pretty sure I said it on the podcast. If I don't have one of those two of Jokic or Embiid, I want a guy that does what Deandre Ayton does. Really solid defender, smart player, good rebounder, and finds a flow in the offense. Great pick and roll player, good hands, doesn't get in the way, right? And there's another guy down the list that I'm going to talk about as well that does a similar thing. So Deandre Ayton, to me, 17 and 11, still 23 years old. He hasn't gotten that much better in terms of scoring wise, but again, with Booker and the addition of Chris Paul, he's not being asked to score as much. He's not creating for himself out of the post all that often. But within this short range game, he has the ability to do so. And I was kind of excited to see him somewhere else, to be honest. So I was disappointed that he went back. But I think Ayton, to me, again, this is the conversation is if I don't have Embiid or Jokic, I want DeAndre Ayton because I think he is what a center should be. And again, definitely doesn't fall off in the playoffs. We saw him be a premier part of their, Western Conference Finals run 2 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have DeAndre Ayton as my number 4. So
there you go.
We'll be fighting this anti-DeAndre Ayton propaganda together, I guess. But yeah, I don't understand what the bad rap about this guy is. And I think there has to be some sort of attitude issue or something underlying behind the scenes. To me, it makes no sense like why there is such hesitancy. I get like the tax implications. I get there's financial considerations. But for me, it's like this guy was the number 1 pick 4 years ago, has gotten better every year. And he's had a little bit of up and down. He hasn't been like a perfect acceleration to his development. But like from my point of view, I think he's gotten consistently better enough that you can bank on this guy. Like you said, he's just about to turn 24 next week. Last season, he averaged 17.2 points, 10.2 rebounds, 1.4 assists, 0.7 blocks, 0.7 steal. Not much of a shooter, but shows a nice little touch on his jumper that I believe that it will come. He's still young, still in his development. Yeah. And like you said, like he just does his job. And when we talk about like guys playing deep into the playoffs and if they're capable, I know DeAndre Ayton's capable because he's done it before. And like he's that level of just big man and center that can last in the postseason. And I really think there's way too much of like a negative perception around this guy.
I've never really understood it. Kind of like what you said. Like I don't really understand why people don't like him. Yeah. I've always been like, okay, again, he falls down the line a little bit on that roster. And his points haven't gone up that much in these 4 years. He's kind of stayed at that 16 to 17, but he's gotten increasingly more efficient. So what, he was like 14 and then
he
17
went 18,
and then 16.
18, then he dipped. I think it went 14, 18, 16, 17 is what I'm pretty sure it was. I know his sophomore like season, he scored like his most points per game. So I don't know if people look at that as like such a negative. It's also kind of one of those like when you're on like a very good team, like you just don't always get those touches. And I do think he's a guy that like there's more to his game than he's necessarily able to show because of obviously there's Devin Booker, Chris Paul, Mikal Bridges, and everything else that kind of is with that roster. So I like DeAndre, and I'm glad you're on the same page.
Yeah, definitely. So my number 4, I feel like we're kind of flip-flop now, but my number 4 is Bam Adebayo. And I don't love Bam. Again, Heat player not even really in the factor. I just think at times he's limited. I think at times he's not as he's undersized, but he does a great job defensively, and we've seen him make incredible defensive plays. He's a really good passer. He can make that mid-range shot. He doesn't extend the floor too much beyond that, but he can make that mid-range. But even in the playoffs, like in that series, like the centers, Embiid and company were sagging off him and saying, do whatever, it's fine. If you're shooting that mid-range, that's fine with us. He doesn't have the handle's not super there. Like it just doesn't completely do it for me. So I like Bam because he's versatile defensively. He's able to hang with guards, high motor guy, really good rebounder. And another guy that like, if you didn't have one of these top guys, one of these top 2 or 3 or 1 or 2 guys, Bam's a really nice center to have because again, he doesn't really get in your way and he does add an addition of passing because he does have vision as well. So that's why I put Bam here at my number 4.
Yeah, I think that's solid. I don't have Bam quite yet. I agree with a lot of what you just said. To move to my number 5, I have Rudy Gobert. I don't love Rudy, but I can't take away from what he does. Looking at his stats last year, he's 30 years old, averaged 15.6 points, 14.7 rebounds, which led the league in rebounds per game, 1.1 assists, 2.1 blocks, 0.7 steals. And he also shot 71.3% from the field, which led the entire NBA. Rudy Gobert is extremely limited in what he does, but is so elite at the things that he can do. And to me, like, there's enough there, and you can like find ways to do things that he can't do and provide players around him to do what he can't do. That makes it work. And the stuff that he is very good at, he's so very good at, to me, that like I couldn't quite take it away. And he's also shown flashes. I've been very critical of his perimeter defense, like across his career. I do think he's gotten better. Like there's flashes of him sticking with Luka. There's in last year's postseason, there's just moments where he like has shown some like enough growth in that area that like I'd be comfortable like banking on like him in the postseason. And I think the Karl Anthony Towns and his dynamic will work quite well.
Yeah, I have Gobert here as well, my next up. And I wish you guys could see the list I have here, because I literally have arrows moving like all day today. I was going back and forth, and I had Gobert here, and then I had Gobert at 3, and then I was like, nah, and then I moved Ayton. So it's taken me a while to kind of figure out this list, but Gobert, really same vein. Incredible at what he does. Maybe, a top 3 rim protector of all time. When you talk about when it's all said and done, he's got 3 DPOYs now. Again, maybe I don't agree with that, but can I argue it? Not really. He's incredible at what he does, and he's a lob threat, good screener, big body. Same thing. You don't have a creator like that. I think in a better position. Minnesota's an interesting fit. I'm really curious to see how that works out, but that's where I have Gobert. I guess that's my 5 or 6.
I just gave my 5, so that's your number 5 too then.
Yeah.
So my number 6, this is where I have Bam Adebayo, and
okay.
I agree with a lot of what you said. He's like the archetype of player like I really like, but he just doesn't quite like do it for me. And the way he gets like perceived nationally and talked about so much, it's like that's just not quite who I think Bam Adebayo is.
Yeah.
Like looking at his stats, he's 25 years old, average 19.1 points, 10.1 rebounds, 3.4 assists, 1.4 steals, 0.8 blocks. Shot 55.7% from the field. Also isn't a 3-point shooter. He can put the ball on the floor a little bit. The thing that like really was red flags for me with Bam was this playoffs when Joel Embiid returned. And like, not that like obviously we just ranked Embiid first in our center list, so I obviously think he's significantly better. But like the way I feel like Bam is perceived, the gap shouldn't be as large as it actually is. And like even his productive minutes were, and this is smart on Spoelstra's like part, so I'm not fully taking this away, but like they were staggering minutes to get him with B-Ball Paul or matched up with other guys. And I get like, once again, Joel Embiid is like an exception. Like this is obviously like a premier talent on both sides of the floor. But like if you're as good as you think you are or perceived to be, you should be able to at least like hang a little bit or do a little, like bring more of a challenge. So I just think Bam gets a little overrated nationally. I think he's still a very good player, fine player, but I just don't think he's quite in the top tier the way it's
He plays in Miami, so what else to be expected? I mean, on top of that, none of us will ever forget the NBA ranking. Who was it? Bleacher Report ranking, Bam above Embiid.
Yeah.
So none of us will forget that. But to move on here, I have Robert Williams here.
Nice.
I begrudgingly love Robert Williams. When you talk about, like I said earlier, the archetype of center. If you do not have Embiid or Jokic, the archetype of center that I want, like if I was picking one out, it would be Rob Williams. Elite lob threat, really good rim protector, but also has great hands defensively. He's good in the pick and roll defense. And again, he just gets out of the way. Offensively, he's going to set your screens. He has really good chemistry with the Celtics, with multiple players in pick and rolls. You see a lot of, what he was able to do in the playoffs. Came back from a knee injury and still came back and was really effective. I like Robert Williams a lot. I think as he grows, I think they've given him the time to grow into the player that he is, and given a little bit more time being a starter and getting those minutes and, facing off against guys like Joel Embiid and Jokic and Ayton and those guys. As he starts to sharpen his abilities, I think Rob Williams is a guy that going forward, I think a lot of people are going to want or enjoy his game. So Rob Williams here for me.
Yeah, I love Robert Williams. I have no issue with anything you have. I have him. I'll get into him, but my number 7 to move on, I have Jared Allen, and a guy I also really like. And I was tempted to get Evan Mobley on this list just because I like him a lot as well. I think they're a little weird with the dynamic. What were you gonna say?
So I was like, but same thing with Cat for me. If they start alongside each other, I don't think you can have both. But I do love Evan Mobley as well.
Which is fair. But Jared Allen, he's only 24 years old, which I was a little surprised. I was thinking he was older than that in my head. Last season, he averaged 16.1 points, 10.8 rebounds, 1.6 assists, 1.3 blocks, 0.8 steals, shot 67% from the field. Another guy that I think like fits what you want in a center. He's more versatile than he gets credit. He can defend a little bit on the perimeter. Very good shot blocker. Love the throw, of course. And I do really like Jared Allen. I think he goes underappreciated across NBA circles. So I think he's not far off from the guys ahead of him that we've talked about. And I think he gets forgotten a lot.
Yeah, I mean, he was the ticket in the Brooklyn trade. He ended up being the one guy that stood out, with the way that all played out. I have Jared Allen here as well at number 7. I think last year was, not really him stepping up, but being noticed, getting a little bit more of a chance to get out there. Being only 24 years old, thinking back to that series against the Sixers when he was in Brooklyn, like, the type of player he is now compared to then, he's way more dynamic, such a much better feel for the game, both defensively and in the pick and roll. Like, he was a big, long, athletic defender before rim protector, but it just seems like he's understanding and reading things a lot better, anchoring a defense. Having Evan Mobley next to him is also incredible. They're super fun. I don't know what that'll turn out to be, but they are super fun. I'm a big Evan Mobley guy as well, but I also have Jared Allen here, big fan of him. He still gets bullied by Embiid, but so does everybody else. So give everybody a pass on that.
And then my last slot here, number 8, I have Robert Williams.
Okay.
I agree. I absolutely love Robert Williams. And also for everything we're talking about, for what he did in the playoffs, like, he was very clearly still injured in that. Like, there were moments where he was clearly like hobbling up and down, and he still competed. He still was able to move his feet a little bit on the perimeter. I agree. I think he just does a lot extremely well. The numbers don't pop. He's still only 25 years old. Averaged 10 points, 9.6 rebounds, 2.0 assists, 2.2 blocks, 0.9 steals. Shot 73.6 from the field, which is just like an indication of how efficient he is. Like you said, a limited role, but he's a guy I believe in is going to continue developing. And defensively, he can do it all, which is, to me, the most important thing of what I'm looking at here. He reminds me a lot of kind of Gobert, except that he's obviously Gobert is like more elite at like the thing that they do in terms of shot blocking with that. But I think Robert Williams is just much more complete in what he can do on the perimeter on both sides of the ball.
He's more agile, more nimble, like lighter on his feet than Gobert is. So yeah, I agree with you there. So my number 8. So all of these kind of got pushed back because I don't have Cat, right? My number 8, I'm very happy to announce that it is Jonas Valanciunas.
Wow.
And let me tell you why. Valanciunas, first of all, somehow always kills the Sixers. I feel like Valanciunas has always played very well against the Sixers, but 17 points per game, 11 rebounds, was really important with that Pelicans team. And he shot 36% from 3 on a little over 2 attempts. Jonas Valanciunas, to me, bigger body, not able to get out and do as much on the perimeter wise, but he's great screener, great in the screen and roll, a little like a cheeky post game kind of, can do a little bit, can surprise you at times. That little turnaround that he does, it's funny to kind of compare him with Marc Gasol, the way that they played together in Toronto. But like, thinking back, like, Valanciunas does a lot of those same things that just piss you off watching him play against your team. He's just so big that people just run into him and just bounce out. And you're like, it has to be a foul, but then you just see that he ran right into Valanciunas' chest and bounces out. And then you turn around and he has that quirky, like, over the head jumper that, again, so infuriating when it goes in. But that's where I'm at with my number 8 is Jonas Valanciunas. And I was giddy at that going through it today. I was like, I'm going to have Valanciunas in here. I like that.
I like Valanciunas. He shot 7 of 7 from 3 one game last year. I think it was in a half last year. So he does just randomly get hot, and he can play. I think in like another era, he's like a top NBA player even. And he is very good. I left him off just because I don't believe in him guarding on the perimeter. That to me is like a big deal. But he like finds ways to be productive just about in every situation. And even on the Pelicans team, which made not noise in the playoffs, but like won 2 games against the Sun, won 2 games against the Sun, and won the playing game against the Clippers. So at least like, they had a little postseason experience, and he played a key role in that as well. A couple other guys I'll give shout outs to that were kind of on my cusp as honorable mentions. Evan Mobley, I brought up. Sabonis, I think, is close for me. I like Sabonis a lot. Valanciunas I have on here. Jaren Jackson, I was very close. I didn't include him just because I think Steven Adams is like technically the center there, so I felt weird taking it, but I think talent-wise, he deserves to be on this list. I think Mo Bamba moving forward will find his way to this list.
Interesting.
I'm high on Mo Bamba, I think, moving forward. And Miles Turner I have right on the cusp too. So those were my honorable mentions to throw out.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I like Turner too. I like all the guys that you mentioned. Most of them were excluded from my list just position wise. I just assumed that like Mobley and Jackson and a couple of those guys, even Sabonis, I think is more of a power forward than he is a center. I also just don't like Domantas Sabonis, so maybe that's a personal thing that I kept him off anyway. But I agree with you. I think a lot of those guys have I think Bamba. It'll be interesting to see what Bamba is able to do going forward. Interesting that the Magic kept him.
He's just so massive. Like his wingspan, I believe it's a 7'9" wingspan. It might even be taller than that.
Yeah,
but,
something crazy.
It's something ridiculous. And but just his frame is insane to me. He can shoot the three a little bit. We saw the game against the Magic this year with Joel Embiid, where he was just going back and forth, connected on a ton of threes, and he's got flashes that I really like. Very good shot blocker. Still putting like the tools together, but I think he just has them all, and it's he will get them all together. Still very young, so Mo Bamba is a name to watch moving forward for me.
Yeah, definitely. So let us know what you guys think. This is an open book. We're ready to hear the discourse on all of these guys. The Deandre Ayton propaganda has been put out there. Pro Deandre Ayton has put out there. So let us know what you guys think. And we're going to move on from here. We have a great interview with Austin Krell. He joined the pod to talk about all the Harden stuff, all the cap space stuff, and just overall the offseason as a whole. So stay tuned. We're going to take a half-second break. We'll get into that interview with Austin Krell, and we hope you guys enjoy. What's up, and welcome back. We are here with a good friend of the pod, Austin Krell. Austin, thanks for joining us today, man. How are you doing?
No problem. Thanks for having me. I'm doing well.
Yeah. So we're good portion into the off season here. So Sean and I have a lot of questions about your expectations for the season, your impressions on the off season so far, and then some in-depth questions about the cap space in general. So can you just give me a general overview of how you've seen this off season go so far? What your impressions are of Daryl Morey's work thus far?
They didn't make any kind of like all-star acquisition, obviously, but they've really added depth. They've gotten tougher, and they've addressed some shortcomings, namely in like the rebounding department, for me at least. I think everything that they've done has been really, really good, and they're certainly a better team after the moves that they've made. They've gotten better in terms of wing defense, in terms of just I think the flavor of person they have there is not it's not as like homogenous with the rest of the group the way that last year it was just, all this good vibe stuff that people talk about. And then you have PJ Tucker coming into the mix, and he's somebody who is, I wouldn't say volatile, but he's gonna push you a little bit to make sure that everybody is at their best, and he's gonna hold you accountable. I think that they've made a lot of the adjustments that you need around the edges, and they've shored up some pieces that, simply put, they didn't really have a complete team in that regard last year.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of us have looked at this team and said, they missed they had a lot of gaps in that roster going into last season. So before I pass it on to Sean to talk about the cap space and all that fun stuff, I want to ask you, do you see an impending move? Like, they are up to the brink in roster spots. They've kind of filled in those gaps piece by piece. They've had a very good summer league that's just wrapping up now. Do you expect them to make a splash, make a trade one way or another, whether it be a small one or go over the top to try to get another star or faux star?
The issue with the star stuff is that you just don't have the assets. Like you have Tyrese Maxey, who would theoretically net you a pretty big return, but doesn't make a lot of money, so you need to make it part of a bigger deal. I don't see anybody pushing down the door to get a hold of Tobias Harris's contract. And then you look down the rest of the roster, like there's pieces that are okay, but no one's gonna commit. No one is getting paid like the big chunk of money that's going to go a long way towards a trade that people are going to want. And so, in terms of a star level trade, I'd be surprised. I think if the Sixers were being 100% honest with you, they'd probably say like we're waiting out to see how this Kevin Durant market materializes, and just seeing maybe if we can enter ourselves into that. But I think realistically, there's just no path for that. And other than that, like I'm sure that they're waiting for other trades to maybe materialize. Maybe a Patrick Beverly is something that could work. Eric Gordon, has been rumored. So I think that they are maybe trying to hunt for some moves around the edges just to shore up their depth. But I think in terms of for the purposes of grandiose roster changes, I think they are what they are at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. And I mean, so to start with, when we look at the Sixers money situation, it kind of starts and ends with James Harden this offseason. When we talk about like none of this is really possible if it isn't for him willing to take the pay cut and like essentially how he's gone about it. And obviously he hasn't even officially signed his contract yet. So we don't even fully know what the number is looking at. SpotRack has him estimated at $32.692 million. It sounds like it's going to be right around there. Do you think this like Harden willing to take the pay cut, was that something that was kind of all along the plan, or did it kind of just how things turned out?
I think it what I don't know. I mean, it's a tough question. Like,
yeah,
I think in theory it could have been part of the plan, and I think that's something that they would probably keep close to the vest because sure. I guess that is grounds for tampering in some respects. I think James Harden kind of took a look at himself and said, I'm not a $47 million player. Right. And, I'm not going to, I could take the money, but we would realistically we'd have no path to actually getting to where we want to go. Or I could take a pretty significant pay cut, do a 1+1, and bet on myself essentially next season. Mm-hmm. I think that's really what he's done to this point. And I mean, I'm certainly going to give him his flowers. It's a noble effort by him to say, I'm going to be the one star, in a world where you have Kyrie Irving and Russell Westbrook and whatnot, who is, I'm not going to take the money. I'm going to re-sign for a significantly lesser value and leave my team some space. I think it's a noble effort, but ultimately, Harden's essentially going to be betting on himself. Like he wants it. I mean, he says he's taking less money, but the reality is he wants a bag because he's taking a 1+1. That's a good chance to bet on himself.
Yeah, sure. And I totally agree. I think you can look at this both ways and kind of the negative or positive aspect in terms of this could be Harden on his decline and kind of smoothing the path. But at the same time, like if this is truly him betting on himself, like he very easily could have opted in for $47 million and still place that same bet on himself. So it's also kind of nice as we look around the NBA nowadays and everything that's in the news with the Kevin Durant, with the Kyrie Irving, it does feel a little nice to kind of be like, that's the situation the Sixers in, is we're looking at it from this side of the coin. And so I do appreciate Harden in that respect. And do you believe that there's kind of more to Harden to be unraveled, or do you think it's kind of that this is who he is, who he is right now? And even James Harden last year is still a very good NBA player and still a guy, the only player in the NBA with 20 that averaged 20 points and 10 assists last year. I think he's accepted that he's kind of not the James Harden, but do you believe there's a little more to him than that?
So you say a little more to him, you mean like in terms of game or like as a person?
Game, in terms of game.
I mean, I think there's certainly more to his game that it may be left for him to get to. Question is, will his body allow him to get there? Sure. I thought last season he was missing a lot of his threes short. So that's either conditioning or that's leg issues. And it just so happens he had a hamstring issue. So that's either a very valid reason, and if he's fixed that, then look out. And if not, then we'll see it. We'll continue to see those shots being short again. But I mean, if there's anything wrong with him, like you're gonna see, shades of brilliance at times, a la the Heat Game 4.
Mm-hmm.
But you're gonna also see times where he's committing 6 turnovers, or he's having trouble moving defenders and getting around them, and then forced to toss up, bricks. And I mean, I still think like the version of Harden you saw last season, even if that wasn't his best self, player was still 20 points, 10 assists. Like,
right.
He's still an all-star level player.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you have that for a full season, you probably project to be what you've always been, which is the top 3 seed, maybe a little higher than that. But if he does have that level to get to, I see no way that this team doesn't become top 2 seed.
Yeah, that's great to hear too. We kind of brushed over it, but as far as the tampering stuff, and we hear the whispers of like the league maybe looking into it and stuff. Do you think that's something that's going to play out more, or do you think it's going to be something that is a non-issue moving forward?
I think it's going to play out, and I think it probably should play out if we're being honest.
Sure.
The Heat got Kyle Lowry, and the Bulls got Lonzo Ball the minute that free agency opened last offseason, and they were certainly investigated, and they were found guilty or whatever. And the Sixers they got PJ Tucker within the first minute of free agency this offseason. It's certainly fair, and that's the price you pay, honestly, for getting involved early and making it so obvious. And I think really the PJ Tucker thing is, I would say, more likely to be investigated in terms of the Harden discount thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's actually pretty fascinating. I've read up on it a little bit. I think one of the things they can do is they can assess like what the market value was for the player relative to if there's an endorsement deal that is signed or is agreed to. They can look at the market value for that endorsement deal, and if the market value of his contract with his team is too low, and the value of the deal with the endorsement is too high, they can say, this is grounds for us further investigating whether you're getting paid off the books. Right. And it so happens that James Harden is launching a wine brand. So,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that I know that for a fact that there's any kind of involvement there, but I do think that it's at least interesting that launches simultaneously. But we'll see in the coming months. But I mean, bottom line is like everyone's going to tamper because that's just what everyone does. Again, if teams are going to do it, either they don't want to do it because that's how you stay competitive.
Right.
And when punishment stops being a second round pick being forfeited, you'll see teams not doing it as much.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I think if it's going to be interesting how the league plays this and how they what kind of magnifying glass they look at it. If it's the PJ Tucker thing, to me, like I'm sure they might get stripped of a second round pick, but that's kind of one of those things you shrug your shoulders at and move on. If it is kind of the behind the scenes James Harden thing, I think that would be a bigger deal in the NBA's eyes and something that I think could be more of a cause for issue. But regardless, I hope that there's nothing there whatsoever and that we move on. I do think it's kind of an NBA issue that needs to be addressed league-wide more than a specific thing. And I think that these are just going to continue to pop up until that's fixed. And the whole, like, the way you can negotiate and not sign. And I just kind of think it sets a bad precedent through everything. But it will be interesting to see how it plays out. To shift gears a little and talk more about, like, the Sixers specifically, a guy that I think has kind of been brushed over in all this is De'Anthony Melton. And I think that's kind of a guy that hasn't been talked about enough. What were your thoughts on the Danny Green trade and on draft night, and what do you think of Melton in general?
I think it's a great pickup. I mean, I think if we're evaluating like what were the odds of a draft pick getting minutes under this regime, I would say probably unlikely.
Right.
Whereas De'Anthony Melton's a relatively seasoned vet in this league. The advanced numbers say he's one of the better reserve guards in the league. I like the deal 100%. You know, I think he's probably you're at least getting fair value for Danny Green, a healthy Danny Green. If not, maybe a little better. He's versatile, even though he's a little bit slight in size. He's still, you know, he can get up and under ball handlers and really stay with them on screens, which is huge. The shooting has been suspect, although he's gotten better. The playoff numbers aren't great, but I think, you know, the mechanics are there. He's made improvements in that regard. I think it just all around it's a good deal. Yeah, I hope Danny gets another chance to play in the league.
Yeah. I think we all kind of fell in love with Danny in his time here. But I was super excited about the Melton trade. I was curious to know that your thoughts. Obviously the PJ Tucker bringing him in. You're paying him $10 million, so he's surely going to be a starter. Going back to the question earlier, you don't see. You're not expecting a trade, to move Tobias Harris. How do you perceive the fit? Because Sean and I have gone back and forth on this a little bit with the fit with Tucker and Harris both starting with the five. How do you perceive that fit with Tucker joining the starting five?
So I mean, I think if they were homogenous and that Tucker was like Tobias, it'd be more problematic. Like Tobias likes to operate by the elbow or by the nail, and he likes to, post up and back guys down. If Tucker were in that same mold, I think it would be more problematic. But Tucker's an off-ball cutter. He likes to peel to the corners and shoot threes from there. Tobias can do from the other corner, or he can space out to the perimeter, or he can do what he likes to do in the post. So I mean, I think people who like to marry themselves to traditional positioning, they tend to have trouble seeing the fit. I kind of think you just throw your five best guys out there, and those are your five best guys. I think it's a fine fit, honestly. And I think what's even better is like people tend to sort of, I guess it comes with maybe the complexity of the CBA stuff, but it isn't like you're not going to have an exception to use next offseason. PJ's money for next season and beyond slides right into your cap space for future seasons. So you'll have a new exception to use next offseason. Maybe you offload Tobias Harris's contract and you have another non-taxpayer mid-level exception to use there. PJ's probably one of the best players you can get on a non-tax mid-level. So I think it's a perfect signing. And I think my philosophy is, I mean, this was the first time that we heard Joel publicly yearn for a guy in free agency. And it wasn't like the same way that he yearned for Jimmy Butler after the fact, after Butler was gone. It was like, this guy's going to be available this summer. I'm telling you that I want him. And I mean, realistically, if the Sixers, the smartest thing they can do is they could say, if we're gonna fall short of expectations in the future, we'd rather do it with the guy that Joel wants than some guy that he didn't want. And so I think it could not have been a better fit. And I think the same thing goes with Dan House. People have questions as to why he wasn't on a roster or why he was bounced around for a little bit after the Houston days. I don't think it's a coincidence that his best season came with James Harden. I think people kind of, I guess, skeptical of maybe, what has he been off the court? The only blemish I can find really, or that I've heard about, is the thing in the bubble. But I mean, I think it's a fine use of the biannual. I think in terms of like Philly guys, for lack of a better description, Daniel House and Tucker are probably going to be two guys that are right in that category. Just like crazy as shit. And just like, they're going to fight for loose balls. They're going to be tough. They're going to want to get in opponents' faces, and that's what the city thrives on. And so even if they don't put together the greatest numbers statistically, they're going to be fan favorites.
Yeah. And speaking of Philly guys, real quick, there were some whispers of Markieff Morris today coming out of his desire to play for the Sixers. Obviously, they still have the same issue of the roster spots and that they're already over the number that they can add. Do you think that there's a path where Markieff Morris becomes a Sixer, and do you think there's a reason to have interest there?
I think there's a reason to have interest. I'll put it this way: I don't think, realistically, you only have about, according to my calculations for Harden's salary this season, you only have about roughly $5 million below the apron. So you can use that space with veteran minimum deals. Those are only going to add about 1.9 or so, 1.7 or so to your salary sheet. So, adding Morris is kind of a low risk and a low risk move, right? Mm-hmm. And you can never have enough guys on the wings that are, maybe small ball fives or just capable 3-and-D wings or forwards. And so I don't think I think it's a sensible move. And if not, then so be it. But I mean, they don't have many other moves they can go with. Like, you can make a trade, you can only take back in total across all trades that you do about $5 million more than you send out. So I mean, they could do that, or they could always just go to the veteran minimum list. And I don't think Markieff Morris is the worst veteran you can find out there. So
sure. Yeah, that makes sense. And so obviously we've talked about there's some stuff in the works, and I think that the NBA world has kind of frozen since there's like Kevin Durant news, and that like it feels like there needs to be like a significant domino to fall before things kind of like open up again. If that doesn't happen and kind of teams go into the regular season as it is right now, which Sixers player do you think would not kind of be the guy that make the top 15 and make the roster, or do you think not even worry about it because there's going to be a deal?
So you're saying which player do I think might not make the roster?
Yeah.
Oh, that's tough. I think Trevelyan Queen.
Okay.
Is just if not for the fact that he only has $300K guaranteed, that's kind of like an easy one to pick, because like they could literally just say we're not going to guarantee the rest of your deal. Sure. And I mean, truth be told, I wasn't wowed by him in summer league. Like, it was mostly a guy who was looking to get his shots up, and did he have moments? Sure, but by and large, he didn't look like a standout. So maybe that's a move. I still think that there's something to look into with Isaiah Joe, and obviously Paul Reed is going to get minutes. It looks like, and Bassey is still somebody who I think has potential to look at. I think if you're going to see any kind of roster condensing, my guess is it would be in the form of trades. And it would be like the usual suspects like Furkan or Matisse.
Right.
But I think if you're just looking to cut somebody, it would probably be Trevelyan Queen.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think that's all we got for you, but I appreciate everything. James, you want to wrap it up any further?
Yeah, absolutely. Austin, again, we appreciate you so much for joining us today. If you want to get more information, more stuff from Austin, you can go to his Twitter, follow him at NBA Krell. You can follow Sean at Sean_Bernard1. You can follow me at JSBirrane17. Again, Austin, we appreciate it, man. And we'll talk to you guys next week.
No problem, guys. Thank you.